Jim DeMint, the guy who helped to bring Marco Rubio to the Senate, announced last week that he's leaving the Senate to go and run a think tank. Is this the biggest blunder in modern conservative history, or a brilliant tactical move that embraces reality and rolls with it? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. Well, men, Jim DeMint is headed to the Heritage Foundation, a conservative Washington think tank quite familiar to PJTV viewers. On the Glenn Beck radio show, DeMint said, "We're not going to win things in Washington until we win the hearts and minds of the people." Now, Stephen Green, I'll bet the folks who watch American Idol and adore Nicki Minaj can't wait to read the next Heritage white paper about free markets and the rule of law. Is a think tank full of policy wonks really a better platform than the Senate for winning hearts and minds?
You know, I don't know. I've really been going back and forth on this since the news came out, I guess, on Monday. But you know what? When Congress enjoys single-digit approval ratings, our congressmen, our senators, they could probably win more hearts and minds if they hang out on busy parking lots and fling poo at people. We have a system that is just become so corrupt at its essence in the things that it does and the things that it wants to do, that people really have lost faith. Okay, maybe they're not listening to the Heritage Foundation, but they certainly aren't listening to anything coming out of Congress. And the one good thing that DeMint did, he may just be frustrated at being stuck in the minority party again, and I certainly understand that. But the one good thing that he did is he is responsible for bringing in 6 more senators who are very much like him. And if he's ready to move on and do something else, whether it's effective or not, I think he can look back on his short Senate career with a certain amount of satisfaction for that.
Well, Bill Whittle, one of the strongest conservatives in the Senate, walks away 2 years into his second term. Is this a sign that the Tea Party revolution is over and that the progressives and rhinos have won, or at least confirmation that the Mayan calendar is right?
Well, I'm going to go with A over B, but I'm not sure it's either of those two. I'll tell you this, though. There are 535 Americans that live in a democracy, and the rest of us don't. And of that 535, 100 of them live in sort of a super democracy, and that's the Senate. Jim DeMint represents one of 2 voices for his entire state. Now, he's right when he says you will not win elections by politics, that you have to win the hearts of the minds of the people. So if he's making the case for getting out of Washington and taking the fight out of Washington, I don't understand why you take the fight out of Washington into Washington. I don't understand how you leave the Senate and all of its power, walk across the street and go to a think tank. It's an utterly mysterious thing for me. If Jim DeMint had been offered the chairmanship of Paramount Pictures, I would say it was the most brilliant, honest-to-God, hopeful move on the face of the earth. But to take away 1 vote out of 100, to remove 1% of the total voting power of the Senate and probably a full 10 or 15% of the conservative voting power of the Senate, just walk away from that? I don't understand it to save my life. I do not understand. Look, everybody loves the Heritage Foundation. Everybody admires what they do. I don't want to put them down. But honestly, this is a man who's saying the world is going to hell. Let's go out and convert all the sinners we can, and then simply locks the door to the church and sits and lectures the choir for the rest of his life. I don't understand it, Scott.
You know, Senator DeMint told Glenn Beck, and this is a quote, "Republicans are not reliable communicators. The Heritage Foundation has a base of great ideas and can showcase where great ideas are working," end quote. Well, Steve, even if you agree, as Bill and I also do, that that Heritage has the ideas, can they sell those ideas? And if so, who's buying?
Yeah, that's the problem. You talk about our problem with the communications. Reagan was the great communicator, and what did he know that we don't know, or that we forgot? It brings me back to my complaint about Mitt Romney's campaign, where he was always trying to remind you that he believes in free markets and that he believes in liberty. What he never did was try and sell you on free markets and on liberty. He made the argument that he believed in these things, not why you should believe in these things.
Yes.
So we need the think tanks to come up with the policies, the creative policies, but we need the candidates to sell them. We need to breed these guys in a lab somewhere. They don't just bubble up. And that's our problem. We're not producing the salesmen, we're producing the comfortable candidates who reassure us. What we need are the uncomfortable candidates who can sell the middle.
Well, Bill, you've made the case recently that we need to essentially move forward as if there is no government and to focus our attention on creating the private sector infrastructure that can actually put our principles into practice. Is Senator DeMint barking up the right tree by stepping out of government, or did you have something else in mind?
He barked. He got it exactly half right, Scott. If Jim DeMint had said, look, the political fight is worthless unless you get into the cultural fight, and he had left the Senate and then got into the culture, this would have made sense to me. But he left the Senate to go into a think tank. It's utterly insane. If he had left the Senate and said, I am going to start the American Academy, it's going to raise $100 million to standardize homeschooling so that all across this country, people can with confidence remove their children from public education and get a standardized nuts and bolts education that's based on information and skills and measurable results rather than this public school indoctrination, it would have been a coup, it would have been a masterstroke. So he was right about why he should leave the Senate. He was utterly wrong about his destination. I do not for the life of me understand what he will add to the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is full of very bright people. They have some very good ideas. But the Heritage Foundation doesn't need somebody contributing more good ideas. The Heritage Foundation needs somebody, well, forget the Heritage Foundation. What the country needs is somebody, I've been saying this since the election, somebody who understands the messenger and the message have to combine. In other words, the Heritage Foundation writes the instruction manual, right? You open your widget, you open a toaster or a vacuum cleaner, inside is an instruction manual on here's how this thing works. That's what the Heritage Foundation should do. Here's how this thing works. But the people that write the instruction manuals don't write the sales copy. They're not the same people that write the commercials that make you want to go buy the vacuum cleaner in the first place. And that's where our problem is. And so I think Jim DeMint pulled a critical vote out of the Senate and put it someplace absolutely useless.
Well, it's hard not to see DeMint's departure from the Senate as a net loss for the country. He has stepped out of the arena and into the bleachers, and then declared that the bleachers is where the real game is played. Now, that could be true, but policy wonks don't win hearts and minds. The progressive left advances its agenda through movies, music, news media, games, video, and public education. The conservative right will not win hearts and minds through PowerPoint presentations, white papers, talk radio, think tanks, debates, and books. That's because most people respond to drama, song, comedy, dance, color, and poetry. These are the vehicles of ideology, but their primary purpose is entertainment, encouragement, consolation, emotional connection, and creative expression. Senator DeMint is correct. We have to transform the culture before we can change the Senate. But his first job will be to change the culture of the Heritage Foundation itself. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.